Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the absolutely most destructive and honestly awe-inspiring climate phenomena on Earth. We're going to examine the history, the science, and the totally devastating impacts of a global weather pattern that can literally reshape life on our planet. We're talking about the Super El Niño. To really wrap our heads around the scale of what we're dealing with, think about this number, 2 degrees Celsius. Now, if the air outside warms by 2 degrees, you probably wouldn't even bother taking off your sweater, right? But when the average sea surface temperatures in parts of the Pacific Ocean rise by 2 degrees Celsius or more, it is the precise trigger for global chaos. That seemingly tiny oceanic shift is the birth of a Super El Niño. And the fallout from that 2-degree shift? It's almost beyond comprehension. Take this staggering figure, for example. $5.7 trillion. That is the global economic loss triggered over a 5-year period by just one single Super El Niño event. We're talking about entire economies being derailed, infrastructure completely destroyed, and agricultural systems just collapsing. But beyond the sheer economics, there is a profoundly tragic human toll. 50 million lives. That's how many people were lost to famine and related disasters during the deadliest Super El Niño event on record. It's a really sobering reminder that we aren't just talking about shifting weather patterns here. We're talking about events that dictate human survival. Section 1. Defining the climate phenomenon. Okay, let's break this down clearly. A Super El Niño is essentially a climatic phenomenon where average sea surface temperatures in parts of the Pacific spike by 2 degrees Celsius or more. Interestingly enough, the term Super El Niño isn't actually an official agency designation. It's more of an informal descriptor that researchers first coined back in 2003 to describe an event where sea surface temperatures, massive equatorial upwelling, and wind stress anomalies are just proportionately huge. And comparing it really highlights the difference in scale. On one hand, you have a standard El Niño. We've all heard of those, right? They warm the eastern equatorial Pacific and might bump up the global average surface temperature by a few tenths of a degree. But a Super El Niño, that is a massive, sudden 2-degree spike. Because of this dramatic difference, NOAA officially categorizes these specific 2-degree events as a very strong El Niño. So why does this oceanic warming matter to you and me? Well, when that water warms, the impacts literally ripple outward far beyond the equatorial Pacific. It causes extreme, completely unseasonable weather. We see widespread severe flooding in some areas and crushing droughts in others. This immediately leads to crop failures, disrupted water supplies, and catastrophic famines. We also see major spikes in wildfires, cyclones, and disease outbreaks. It is so powerful that it can even trigger lasting climate regime shifts, meaning permanent changes in weather patterns. Section 2. A history of extremes. In all of recorded human history, we have actually only documented 5 of these Super El Niños. When you lay them out on a timeline, just notice the spacing. We have one back in the late 19th century from 1877 to 1878. But then look at the clustering, 1982, 1997, 2014, and 2023. While these events are historically rare, you can clearly see that the gap between them has shrunk dramatically in recent decades. They are, without a doubt, becoming more frequent. Section 3. 1877 to 1878. The deadliest event. Let's look closely at that first one, because the devastation was truly global. This single ocean warming event triggered 5 major global famines simultaneously. We are talking about the Great Famine in India, the devastating Northern Chinese famine, the Grande Seca in Brazil, and massive deadly crop failures stretching all the way across Egypt and Java. Those 50 million lives lost that we mentioned earlier, that happened right here as a direct result of these 5 cascading famines. Meanwhile, over in North America, the unseasonable warmth was so extreme it actually became known as the year without a winter. Just think about that. One ocean shift, starving continents away. Section 4, 1982 to 1998, Science and Trillions. Jumping forward into the late 20th century, the 1982 to 1983 Super El Niño was a massive wake-up call. It caused absolutely devastating droughts across Africa, Indonesia, and Australia, while simultaneously triggering heavy rains and severe flooding in South America. The sheer scale of the disruption caused a massive upsurge in scientific interest. Researchers realized they urgently needed to understand this phenomenon, setting the stage for what was going to happen just 15 years later. Which brings us to the 1997 and 98 event. The fallout here was just unprecedented in modern times. It temporarily warmed global air temperatures by 1.5 degrees Celsius, way above the usual El Niño bump.
It was ecologically devastating, killing off an estimated 16% of the world's reef systems. And remember that $5.7 trillion economic loss within 5 years we talked about? This was the event. And what's really fascinating is that the sheer financial destruction actually forced the market to adapt. This specific event birthed commercial global prediction models, simply because governments and businesses realized they literally could not afford to be caught off guard again.
Section 5. The Modern Crisis. We have seen back-to-back Super El Niño events in just the last decade, and the global impacts are really compounding. Let's compare them side by side and see how this builds. The 2014 to 2016 event brought severe drought conditions to Australia and Venezuela and spun up higher than normal numbers of tropical cyclones in the Pacific Ocean. Then, right on its heels, we get the 2023 to 2024 event. The World Meteorological Organization declared its onset on July 4, 2023. It brought catastrophic flooding to Brazil, severe drought to southern Africa, and directly contributed to a full year of record-breaking global average surface temperatures stretching well into mid-2024. Section 6. The Ancient Mega Niño. Believe it or not, paleoclimatologists have actually found evidence of these events happening way before our instruments could even record them. They call them Mega Niños. The term was coined in 1994 by archaeologist Betty Meggers. By looking at geologic evidence and contemporaneous historical accounts, scientists can identify massive oceanic warming events from thousands of years ago. And here is a truly mind-bending fact drawn from the research. Scientists speculate that an ancient Mega Niño event may have actually contributed to the end Permian mass extinction. That was a cataclysm that wiped out roughly 90% of all life on Earth. That is the ultimate, terrifying scale of this climatic lever. Section 7. Bracing for the future. So we've looked at the devastating famines of the 19th century, the multi-trillion-dollar disasters of the 20th century, and the back-to-back extremes of the modern day. Looking at all this data, a really crucial takeaway emerges. Sea surface temperature variability has actually increased since 1960. Basically, the ocean's temperature is swinging more wildly. Because of this, scientists predict that Super El Niño events will continue to become more frequent in the years ahead. We could visually see that trend in the timeline we reviewed earlier. Which leaves us with this final, frankly unsettling thought. With global temperatures already on the rise, are we really ready for an era where the Super El Niño becomes a frequent visitor? We know the history of massive global famines, we know the trillions in economic damage, and we know the models are pointing toward way more instability. The science is laid out right in front of us. The only question now is how humanity will prepare for the next time the Pacific Ocean decides to boil. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.